The sheriff knocked on my brother's front door at exactly 8:14 in the morning. I know because my brother, Camden, later complained about the timing, like professionalism was somehow the real crime here. Couldn't they at least wait until people were awake, he said over voicemail. The irony nearly put me through a wall. Because apparently stealing your younger brother's inheritance was acceptable. But waking up early? Now that crossed a line. I was sitting in a diner outside Tulsa when the call came in. Rain tapping the windows. Burnt coffee smell. Local farmers arguing softly about diesel prices 2 booths behind me. Normal morning. Which made the moment feel even stranger. I let the voicemail play twice while my eggs went cold. Then I stared out the window and thought. Well. There it is. 3 years of swallowing humiliation finally arriving in a county-issued SUV. See, people love talking about betrayal like it happens in one dramatic moment. It doesn't. Real betrayal moves in quietly and rearranges furniture while pretending to help. My father died when I was 31. Heart attack. Sudden. No long goodbye. No cinematic final advice. Just a phone call at 2:07 a.m. and a drive through empty highways with both hands shaking on the steering wheel. Dad owned 70 acres outside Broken Arrow and a successful equipment rental business he built from almost nothing. And Camden? Camden considered himself the natural heir because he wore loafers and said asset portfolio during barbecues. I actually worked beside Dad. Repair contracts. Inventory management. Customer calls at 6 in the morning from contractors losing their minds because a backhoe died mid-project. Dad used to joke that Camden knew business vocabulary while I knew business reality. Turns out reality photographs worse. At the reading of the estate documents, Camden arrived wearing a navy suit worth more than my truck. His wife, Felicia, sat beside him with one of those carefully sympathetic expressions people practice in mirrors. I should have known then. Happy people don't rehearse sadness. The attorney cleared his throat and explained there had been significant debt concerns before Dad passed. According to Camden, Dad privately loaned him control of major assets to protect the company from financial instability. Loaned. Interesting word. Especially considering the documents transferred almost everything directly to Camden. The land. The equipment company. Even Dad's lake cabin. My share? A modest cash settlement that suspiciously matched the exact amount of my remaining mortgage. Clean. Convenient. Insulting. I remember staring at the paperwork while Camden leaned back confidently. You know, Dad trusted me with complex decisions. Complex decisions. Guy said it like he'd negotiated peace treaties instead of manipulating paperwork around a grieving family. Mom barely spoke during the meeting. Just folded tissues in her lap and avoided eye contact like silence itself could become camouflage. That hurt more than Camden talking. Because deep down, I think she knew. I left quietly. Again. That became my role in the family. The reasonable son. The calm one. The guy expected to absorb disappointment without becoming inconvenient. And honestly, for a while, I almost convinced myself maybe Camden was telling the truth. Grief does weird things to certainty. Then little cracks started appearing. First, Camden sold 3 pieces of heavy equipment Dad specifically said he'd never liquidate because they anchored long-term contracts. Then he renovated the lake cabin into some luxury Airbnb thing with string lights and curated rustic experiences. Dad would have hated that sentence enough to resurrect himself. Still, I said nothing publicly. Patience. Observation. People like Camden always overplay confidence eventually. My ally through all of it was Ren Holloway, Dad's longtime office manager. Sharp woman. Early 60s. Smoked peppermint gum instead of cigarettes after quitting and somehow made that intimidating too. One evening she invited me into the old office after hours. Dusty sunlight through blinds. Filing cabinets humming quietly. Dad's coffee mug still sitting near the accounting desk like he might walk back in any second. Wren closed the door and said softly, "Your father never trusted Camden with signatures." Yeah. That got my attention. She handed me archived bookkeeping folders and old authorization records. Tiny details at first. Signature inconsistencies. Date overlaps. Equipment collateral filing submitted after Dad was already hospitalized. And the biggest one? A notarized loan authorization processed by a notary who was vacationing in Arizona the same week. That's when I knew this was gonna get messy. Wren wanted immediate legal action. I didn't. Not yet. Because proving fraud isn't just about facts. It's about timing. And Camden was still busy destroying himself beautifully. Over the next year he leveraged the inherited assets aggressively. Refinanced equipment. Expanded credit lines. Hosted flashy business mixers at the cabin pretending he was some self-made rural entrepreneur. Guy loved an audience. Meanwhile I kept working independently doing equipment consulting for smaller contractors around Oklahoma. Quiet money. Honest work. Camden interpreted my silence as weakness. Huge mistake. At Thanksgiving he actually clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You bounce back eventually, little brother." Little brother. 34 years old and the man still talked like we were fighting over Xbox controllers. I smiled. Probably. Because angry people announce plans. Calm people collect receipts. The trigger came during a regional business association banquet Camden practically sponsored to celebrate his leadership growth. God, even saying that out loud feels exhausting. The event took place inside this polished hotel ballroom in Tulsa. Chandeliers. Fake humility. Men in expensive boots pretending they'd never touched a spreadsheet. Camden loved every second. At one point he gave this speech about honoring family legacy through bold decisions. I nearly choked on my bourbon. Then he made the mistake. He publicly thanked the county legal office for helping protect our inheritance process. Specific. Unnecessary. And legally interesting. Wren looked at me from across the ballroom. Tiny nod. Game time. I stood slowly and asked, calm as ever, "You mean the inheritance process involving forged authorization documents?" Silence hit the room hard. Camden laughed immediately. Too quickly. "There he is," he said. "My conspiracy theorist brother." A few nervous chuckles floated around. Then the ballroom doors opened. Sheriff's deputy. County investigator. And a civil enforcement officer carrying folders. Nobody plans for how loud polished rooms become when confidence suddenly leaves them. Camden's expression changed first. Not fear exactly. Recognition. Like part of him always knew this day existed. The investigator approached calmly. "Mr. Mercer, we need to discuss several discrepancies related to estate transfers and financial filings." Felicia actually stepped backward. Smartest decision she made all year. Camden tried performing confidence for another 30 seconds. Questioning procedures. Mentioning attorneys. Smiling too hard. But arrogance collapses ugly when facts stop cooperating. The investigation uncovered forged authorization records, falsified debt disclosures, and asset transfers tied to manipulated filings. Turns out when you build wealth on fake paperwork, eventually paperwork fights back. Most of the estate transfers got frozen pending civil review. The Airbnb cabin shut down. Business accounts locked temporarily. And Mom? She finally cried honestly. Not defensive tears either. Real ones. The kind people have when silence finally stops protecting them. Months later, after settlements and legal restructuring, ownership of Dad's original company was divided properly under supervised review. Ren stayed on board voluntarily. I kept most operations small on purpose. No flashy relaunch. No revenge speech. Just steadier work. Cleaner books. Peace. Last month I drove out to the lake cabin alone. Cold evening. Water still. Wind through cedar trees. Dad's old workshop smelled like engine oil and sawdust exactly the way I remembered. I sat on the porch a while thinking about how Camden spent years calling theft a loan because it sounded more respectable. Funny thing is, people can rename betrayal all they want. Truth still answers to its original name eventually.